Hello and welcome back to the Hurling Show. It's the last one of the league. We're going to go in hard for this one. We've got Davy Fitz who's going to come on the show and talk to us about the misconceptions of how teams are setting up in hurling. We've seen a lot of criticism of the likes of Dublin, how they played with a sweeper, or so it was suggested in the league semi-final against Limerick. And meanwhile, Limerick, who often operate with 12 in their own half, are lauded. So I'm Shane Stapleton. With me, as ever, is Michael Verney. Michael, how are you doing?
Shane, how are you? Good now.
Good, and of the Irish Independent, of course. And we have Will O'Callaghan of Off the Ball as well. How are you?
Afternoon, lads.
Good stuff, good stuff. Looking forward to getting Davy Fitz on. But first off, we have to talk about the goat of the week, Aaron Gillane. There was nobody else.
Unbelievable, and he could have had 114 or even 214 if everything had went well. But he was phenomenal, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was exceptional. Now you have to say he's possibly up there with the best hurlers in the country at the moment.
The way he's playing, I think week in, week out, it's hard to argue, and he delivers every week nearly without fail.
Do you think that other forwards could do the same with the same service he's getting?
He is getting a great service, but he's unbelievably good in the air, to be fair. Yeah,
there's the goal of the week.
I think we don't know how we find a different one every week. But to be fair, like, he's getting great service, but he's always the out option in that he's brilliant in the air as well. For a lad that's not particularly big, he's phenomenal in the air, and if they're in trouble, they can just kind of deliver that sort of diagonal high ball in, and invariably he'll win at least 50-50 of them.
And he's very good at sneaking in behind as well. Sure,
Noel Connor's thought he had him out in front of him, and then all of a sudden he was just gone in behind him for the goal.
It's very simple. Like, if you stand out as a cornerback and you're getting in front, you're just going to wait and bump you and catch the ball over you. Noel Connor's actually had an excellent game, but still somehow had a huge amount of scores taken off him, and I wouldn't necessarily blame him.
Very little he could do, very little he can do. Even he got the hurl up in Gillane's eye line for the goal, so the fact that he was still able to connect with that little flick was a phenomenal skill.
Fantastic. And the way that Limerick worked the ball out the field, short puck out, quickly gets its way to Richie English, who pops it to Tom Morris, who's in midfield, and fired a low ball nicely in front of Gillane, who...
I have an issue with the short puck out. Like, Waterford just gave away the puck out nearly every time. They just let Richie English have the ball at least 50% of the time, and then they were able to, they had the ball in possession. You see how hard it is to get possession off them. I don't understand why you'd give it to them, to be honest with you.
Well, the thing is, then you're going to push really far up the field, which means there's more option for the Limerick movement for the puck out at the other end. Because
I'd prefer that though, because it's a long distance thing.
You get a lot of free scores out of that because the three half forwards all bunched together and there's nothing but space either side of them. So you need to drop back to counteract that. If you drop back, you're giving the ball to the likes of Richie English. But
if you give the ball to Richie English, he'll carry the ball and they'll create an overlap using these kind of triangular shaped kind of hand pass movements that they do, and then Darragh O'Donovan ends up in a position where he can hit that sort of ball in like Gillane for that point in the second half. Like, I definitely wouldn't be conceding possession.
There's damned if you do, damned if you don't.
But they were conceding possession. They weren't even putting pressure on him. Like, they weren't even splitting the two cornerbacks or the fullback, which I would have a bit of an issue with.
Yeah, if you contrast that with Limerick, if you consider they let some of the short puck outs come out from Waterford, but then they
lots of Shane McNulty as well.
They swarmed the minute that Waterford then tried to walk the ball out. I felt there wasn't enough pressure from Waterford once Limerick got the first couple of passes off, and the fact that Limerick half back line can put such good ball into their forward line as well, you had to try and cut them off at source to try and stop them getting in behind.
After the game, I spoke with and first of all, Darragh O'Donovan and Cian Lynch are basically Xavi and Iniesta. The way they can play that ball up the field is incredible. But afterwards I spoke to John Kiley, and I was trying to ask him, what is it that you're doing and how long did it take to develop this game plan? Now, obviously he didn't want to give too much away, but what he did say is, listen, Paul Kinnerk would have his principles on how the game should be played, and they align very much with how I think the game can be played. So that's a huge starting point. It probably suits our players the way we play. We have to be able to change it too, and not every day can you go out and do it. Your cope with his loss. It must be a typo there. But if we get an image up on screen, we can just look at how Limerick set up when they don't have the ball in their own half of the field. It should be coming up now. There's an image with 12 players in their own half of the field. This isn't the first time that I've put an image up like this either. So people say you can get a still image to prove anything. But this is happening over and over and over again. So 12 players within 55 yards of their own goal. Never mind that, they're all condensed to more or less one half of the field, and there's nobody inside the 21 either. So you're talking about 35 yard space. You've got 11 players. The goalkeeper's obviously staying back.
And the three Waterford players, while trying to play something of their role there, are actually totally out of the game.
They're redundant, because if you go back to that image, you can see the half back line. They don't want to expose their full back line because they know that Limerick at times play that single file forward line. At times they play two inside, one in front, but it's always narrow, so there's space to play. You'll see here, number 11 there, I think, is actually Cian Lynch, marked out on the pitch there. He's about to receive the ball. And if he's running into space, he can just easily bypass all three of those guys. So for Waterford, do you push up on him, or do you stand off him? Because either way, Limerick are trying to work that ball into space.
Probably committing maybe one body more into that ruck and drop. If you're going to have those three bodies there, drop two of them actually back to the 45-yard line where they will actually be effective. If they can score a point from out the field, fair enough. But you have to make sure that there are bodies covering bits of space there to make sure Galan and the boys don't have that kind of room to work
We'll
with.
move on to the next image here now, because we want to look at some of the options that you have inside for Limerick when they get the ball. Now you can see here, and again, people who criticise Dublin for having a sweeper against Limerick, which is Sean Moran standing on the edge of the D. And we have it here in the tactics board, which I'll go to in a second. But just, if you look at this here, this is basically halfway inside the 65 and 45 of Limerick, all the way to the far end of the field. And there's 4 Limerick players there.
But it's not good, the space they have to admit to already.
So because Limerick go back and win the ball by crowding you so heavily, and having 12 players or 11 players in this instance in their own half, and if you have 4 guys playing narrow enough like that in the other half of the field, when they win that ball in defence, Limerick have got nothing but space to play the ball.
You know where that ball is going now as well. I can't remember that play, but I'd be amazed if that ball isn't going to the left corner.
Yeah, we'll move on to the next image here as well. Again, really narrow. You can see Tom Morrissey and Kyle Hayes, 2 half forwards, back in their own half of the field. So if we just move over to the tactics board here for a second, get the camera in on this. On the top half of the board, effectively, this is how Limerick set up. This is how Waterford set up. Which is the more defensive? This is Limerick with 1, 2, 3 in their own half, at times 4, as we've just shown. But it's like this would happen a lot, that you'd have maybe Galan, Graham Mulcahy, and the other inside forward is Peter Casey, and they could be in any sort of setup there. Whereas Waterford are trying to, okay, we'll mark our guy, we'll leave an extra guy back at times, and we'll try and keep our half back line fairly solid. But essentially their forwards are absolutely outnumbered at the other end of the field, and people will say Limerick are the attack-minded team and Waterford are the defensive team. Yet Limerick have 12 in their own half.
Yeah, no, I would agree with you, and it's something Rory O'Connor from Wexford said yesterday, that they get a bad rap for playing the sweeper. He said it's either play the sweeper or play a load of extra defenders or dropping lads back, and that's essentially what Limerick, it's essentially what the template Galway had in 2017 as well, and it's very, very effective, because if you're crowding this area here and are able to win the ball here, like a lot of the time it's just putting it over the traffic, it's putting it over these bodies here then. And then you're golden inside, really, Like
Dublin would have been criticised for Sean Moran standing there, but it was the same thing all across the field. They're getting crowded out at the other end of the field. We'll cycle quickly through a couple more of the images that we have left just from the game on Sunday. You can see here it's one man up. I think that was possibly Graham Mulcahy. If a good ball goes into space there, he's the only guy, like he's standing on the edge of the D, he's the only guy within 50 yards of the Waterford goal there as well.
A lot of it, just on the defensive point thing there is that, like, if that's Nolan Connors marking Graham Mulcahy, I'm not too sure who it was at the time, like, they have to talk to the man in front. He has to be basically telling him left, right, because otherwise Mulcahy is in total control, he goes left or right, and it could take 2 of them out of the game conceivably.
Yeah, you need Connors standing on one side telling the other defender, I want you to stand on the left side here so that you can get to it first if it goes left, I can get to it first if it goes right. We'll move on to the next image. Yeah, you can see once again this is how narrow the Limerick forwards are playing, meaning that there's 40 yards of space on either wing. So if you spread out really wide, it's kind of easy to mark a half forward if you can stand inside him and you're nicely spread out with your other half back line and your full back line. We'll go on to the next image. And again, this is, I think Limerick had a free in this situation. So they've got 3 guys inside who are bunched fairly close together, half forward line in single file, and nothing but options in space. You can see those arrows up on the screen, so the Limerick forwards can go anywhere they want.
The thing about lads standing so close together there as well is, and a lot of the time they'd be even closer, and you can check if I'm playing corner forward and I'm not the one making the run, I can check the run of a defender and I can give your forward an extra couple of yards or that type of thing. Plus they know where they're going. They probably have, it's probably a pattern that they have. First free that comes in like that, I'm going left, you're going right, you're going to the middle, or vice versa, or 2 are going left, 2 are going right, and they have it. Like, John Kiley's never going to tell you much about what's going on, but that's down to a fine art on the training field. That's repetitive over and over and over again. It looks like natural movement, but it's just sheer practice.
It's as pre-planned as it gets. So we're going to talk, we get a couple of words from Tommy Walsh about what Waterford can do the next day. Like, they lost by 8 points and it could have been far more, and it's actually kind of credit to them that they didn't collapse. So here's what Tommy Walsh had to say about Waterford's setup in the future when they meet Limerick.
And it does appear that Waterford, if they played a sweeper or not, they definitely only left a couple of forwards up there, maybe 5 versus 6, which is, in my opinion, is the total wrong thing to do against a Limerick team, because you need to be taking them guys on man for man. If you leave any of them guys, Diarmaid Burns, Mike Casey, Tom Conlon, any of them lads free, they're brilliant, because the guy marking Stephen Bennett or marking Shane Bennett, they will play the man, let the ball break, and suddenly it's on for the sweeper to the spare man that Limerick have to clear up. So I think the only way to beat them, and I think the way they were saying it was Austin Gleeson, when they lined up for the throw-in, I think Austin Gleeson could have lined up in the corner, so is Gleeson and the 2 Bennetts. Then obviously Gleeson would have came out the field. So I think I am right in saying that the 2 boys were left in a 2-man full forward line kind of, but there were 5 versus 6 then, forwards versus backs. Yeah. And I think they're the total wrong tactics to go against Limerick. So I think, and Limerick are the top team, and I've been saying this for many years, Joe, to beat the top teams, you'll pull off shocks and you'll pull off once-off victories, but to win an All-Ireland and to win a championship, a national title, you have to go and play 6 versus 6 or 5 versus 5, but even it up there. Yeah. And I think if this could be the best thing ever happened, Waterford, if they learn from it and if they go back, because we have seen these lads won minor All-Irelands, they won under 21 All-Irelands. These guys, they've got to, them 2 boys play for a club called Ballysagger, they got to a junior club All-Ireland, 2 boys creating havoc. I think you get these boys into 1v1 man-on-man battles, and that's where Waterford will have their best chance. And put Austin Gleeson in a position that it's him versus his man. Yeah. Don't give him a free role. Yeah. Now, again, I'm speaking from looking at it on television, Joe, so I wasn't at the match in Croke Park to see exactly what was going on, but I would imagine it's a fair analysis of it.
Yeah, it's hard to know exactly how Waterford should set up the next day. But first of all, we'll talk more about the misconceptions on teams setting up and how some teams are accused of being negative, others being more positive. We have Davy Fitzgerald, the Wexford manager and former Clare manager, on the line. Davy, how are you doing?
I'm good, how are you?
I'm not too bad. So yeah, that topic straight away, I mean, you would have been, people talking about you playing a sweeper over the years, saying the team is negatively set up. What are your thoughts in general on people's misconceptions on how you set up your team?
Well, listen, firstly, everybody's entitled to their own opinion, and I totally respect that. My job is to win hurling games. I wouldn't agree with a lot of the philosophy that's out there. A sweeper, what is a sweeper? How different is it to how Limerick and Galway play? Kilkenny even played, bringing back their half forward lines into their half back lines, probably having the bones of 10, 11, 12 bodies behind the 65. What do? Do you leave and go back on their own? Do you open up your full back line? Do you sit your half back line like Waterford did back the last day? There's a lot of different stuff in this, to tell you the truth, and different teams set up differently,
And is there something that frustrates you when people say, Davy's playing with a sweeper again, he's not ambitious enough with his team, why don't you throw the shackles off? You often hear that being said.
You know what, it actually would have before. Now I couldn't care less.
Really?
No, I'll be honest, I don't. If you ask any of my players, I often hear this stuff about the way teams set up and that they're gone 6 and 6 above. I haven't seen 6 and 6 in the last 7 or 8 or 10 years even. I haven't seen it. I see wing forwards coming right back and transitioning up the field again. And you look at Limerick at the moment, and in fairness to them, I totally respect how Limerick are playing, and my hat is off to them, and I love the way they play. The lads, Tom Morrissey, Garrod Hegarty, Kyle Hayes, they all get back. Mm-hmm. They might bring Graham Mulcahy out in about 45, 50 yards, leave 2 inside. And even with Waterford sitting back the half-back line the last day, and you look at Aaron Gillane, he always manages to get that ball maybe 10 or 15 yards out to the side of him, one of the best forwards in the country. So he does, he gets the space, but they'll hit long sometimes, they'll pick it short from their half-back line and sometimes shoot from the middle of the field. You even look at Galway in 2016, they more or less won their All-Ireland from their half-forward line. You look at where Joe Canning was most of the time, they scored so many scores from the middle of the field there, the one the All-Ireland was unreal. And I respect that, whatever it takes for them counties to achieve it, fair play. And I think if you let's look at the hurling last year, let's look at the enthusiasm around the hurling championship. Can't be all bad when you're playing short and long ball and doing whatever. And my thing, even with the sweep or whatever it is, I think sweep is actually the wrong word for it, tell you the truth, because I often tell you now, to tell you the truth, we'll end up with 5 backs a lot of the time playing back there, not 7. we'll encourage our lads maybe to follow the other wing forward, get up the field, have a chance of scoring. I think it was against Limerick. I look back at one of the goals that we scored against them in the league this year. I think we had 7 or 8 players inside the far 45, you know. And my thing about this whole thing is allow the players to go where they want. Don't confine them to a 30-30 box, you know.
Where did you draw the line between you used to care what people think and then all of a sudden you're like, I don't care anymore, I'm just going to play my own way and not mind what anyone says?
Well, sure, listen, if I do that myself, my old lad would fight all the time, so we would. And I actually sat down, it was very recently, I said, do you actually understand what a sweeper is, or you just listen to people? I said, do you understand it? And I went through it with him and talked about it with him. And before, you're right, it would have, but what's the point? Because if I buy into that, I'm not going to be true and try and get that victory that I want for my team. And let me say this, like, I won't play a sweeper. It depends what team I'm with, who I'm with, what way I need to set up. That's the way I'll play in order to try and win the game.
Because, of course, you didn't for the 2013 All-Ireland final. You went more or less man-on-man. I'm sure you had some tweaks that maybe some of us wouldn't notice, but you went straight up in that game. Yeah,
we did, and for the quarter-final and semi-final we played the sweeper, and I don't think we'd have been the All-Ireland final or won it without playing the sweeper. In the semi-final, in the final, we just felt, and I'll be straight with you at the time, we felt that they'd man-marked Tony Kelly, and if you see the first probably 2 or 3 goals we got, we pulled Tony all over the place to allow us to get into the middle, and if Cork had a sweeper that day, I don't think we'd have got probably 2 of the goals we got.
Yeah.
Tell you the truth, because we left the whole middle open by moving Tony all over the place.
Just looking at your Wexford team now, and if I note over the course of the league, I remember one time Liam Ryan, who's playing in the full back line, or named there anyway, he was inside the 21 in one game taking a shot. Matthew O'Hanlon was involved in 3 goal scoring chances against Galway when he was man-marking Joe Canning. Sean Murphy, who was named number 7, goes up, doubles on a ball and scores a goal inside the 14 as well. Yeah. So number one, it's a case that everyone has license to go forward because Kevin Foley will be back there anyway. And did it take long to convince the players that this is how you were going to play?
I actually gave the players the choice of what they wanted to do, even at the time we talked about it. Now, they get stick probably down below why you playing 7. And listen, you have to respect certain people, and certainly when we were playing back 20 years ago, there was none of this. Even into the 2000s when I was playing, there was nothing like this. But you have to look at it from their point of view. Like, you're not confined to a number 7. You're not confined to a number 2. You're allowing them, like, I listened to, I can't remember who was on the TV a few weeks ago and said that Waterford are expressing themselves by staying 3-on-3 inside. I don't know how that is. Like, I want players to be able to do what they want. If they feel they can get forward 20, 30, 40 yards and it's on and the space is there, go after it. Don't be afraid. And someone else will pick up the slack back to back, you know. Like, there is free players all over the field at different times that can move into different positions, you know.
Yeah. Well, I did, after Joe Canning got injured the other day, and, you know, it was first reported that he had a dead leg, and then Galway came out and clarified it. But I put a poll up on Twitter saying, who do people think is most likely to win the Leinster Championship now? And it was Kilkenny first, then it was Galway with 30%, Kilkenny with 36%, Dublin 27%, and 7% for Wexford. And Rory O'Connor, who was being interviewed yesterday, spoke about how he thought that was unusual that people are overlooking Wexford. Do you think people, like, in the race for Championship silverware, overlook Wexford this year? Because you had a pretty good league.
No, I'm very happy with the league, but sure, listen, it's the same thing again, and as I said, sure, maybe that would have bothered me a few years ago. It doesn't now. I know on our day, like, we played Kilkenny the last 2 years in the Championship. There's been a score in it either way. We won 1, they won 1. Galway, like, it's been tight enough on numerous occasions. Dublin, we know, I actually think are in great form. And trust me, Carol are going to cause problems no matter what the story is, and I'd have massive respect for them. So, I think we have a chance. But listen, I'm happy enough. Whatever people want to think, that's fine. But you know what? When the Championship starts, it's all to play for, and I think Leinster is massively competitive, and I'm looking forward to it.
Davy, I was chatting to Rory O'Connor at a kind of a press gig yesterday in Dublin, and he said his Wexford call-up before the leaving cert was kind of an interesting one. Can you just talk us through that? I believe you gave him a text, and I don't think he thought it was you. He was texting back.
That's right, yeah. It took the second to convince him who it was, you know. And listen, we didn't want to touch him in the first year because of the leaving. We wanted to leave him as long as possible. But that was actually quite funny. But no, it was great to get him on board. Like, he was very young, in fairness, to bring in. But you know what? He thrived in that stage when he came on the very first year against Waterford.
David, just looking ahead then to the season in broad terms as well. It's your third season. Obviously, the players went to you to try and make sure you'd stay on for this season. What do you want to get from this season?
Well, listen, first of all, I probably am as happy with the National League as I ever would. And I have to say, okay, it was a great structure, but I'm actually more happy with the structure that's coming. I think it'll be better and more evenly balanced for all the top teams and for everyone. We got 3 great victories, so really happy with that. To beat Cork, Tip and Kilkenny in the league was good. The only match was probably the second half against Galway for whatever reason, I don't know. They took over on us and that, but we had a really good first half. What would I like? Sure, listen, we've got to win a few of these championship games and see where we can go. If we play with the enthusiasm and the fight, then we have a chance. But I'll be straight with you. The most important thing is the Dublin game. I know Dublin are eyeing it up big time, and I certainly think they've made massive strides again this year under Matty. He knows what he's about, and even against Limerick, I was impressed, even though some people said it was very negative. Like, they brought out their half-forward line. Tomas Limerick bringing back their half-forward line. So naturally, what's going to happen in the middle of the field is you're going to have a lot of players in the middle, that middle third.
Davy, just shifting back to Limerick for a second, I suppose having worked with Paul Connacht for a good few years, it's probably no surprise to you what they're doing. Can you just tell me exactly what he brings to the table?
I know Paul is like he's as good a coach as I've ever come across. And he's a very smart guy. Certain things I know we would have done, and we'd have talked a lot back in 13 and 14 and 15. That was Paul's first senior job, was with Clare. He had done minor and under 21. I would be a big man into formations and trying different bits and pieces, and Paul would be very much the same wavelength. There's nothing that he wouldn't try and have a go at, and I think that's very important. You might often see Limerick bringing in their forwards into the centre and leaving a lot of space outside. Yeah, that's something that we would have done and that we like doing. I suppose the thing of bringing back your half-forward line, I suppose rather than sitting someone back, he's very smart to realise, and Paul was probably a serious footballer himself, and that would be often the way they would play, as well as bringing back your half-forward line and building,
Brilliant. Thanks very much, Davy, for joining us today, and best of luck with the season ahead.
Thanks, lads. Take care.
Yeah, great to have Davy on there, lads. Where do you see Wexford in the sort of hunt for Leinster title this year, especially with Joe Canning being out now? And it just kind of blows it wide open, or it certainly feels like it does.
Yeah, I think Leinster actually looks stronger on paper, at least going in, than it did last year. I think last year it was very easy to decide who the teams were going to be to progress, and I think there was more of a gap. This year, I started to wonder, obviously Dublin I think have improved, and even last year you saw how Dublin were so close to Kilkenny in the opening round of the championship. I think given the league that they've had, have to be very much respected going into this Leinster Championship. But as you mentioned, if Galway have problems, you take their talisman, you take their top scorer out, it has to put them down the pecking order somewhat, I would imagine. I wonder if the reflections of the poll had to do with how many Dublin followers you might have as well.
Yeah, although I'd say
sure, it balances out, but genuinely.
Yeah, there possibly is an element to that as well. Actually, because of Joe Canning's injury, there was initially that reported a dead leg, as we mentioned earlier, and Galway put out a statement basically saying that they were unhappy enough with the fact that it was reported that way. First of all, Joe Canning put up this thing seriously milking this dead leg now with the eyes up to heaven from the Matter Private in Cork as well. Funny enough, update as well. I'm sure he's just making fun of the situation as well. But what do you make of Galway actually having a pop at the media over that? It's not as if, as a media person, you get onto a county board and they're there, well, whatever information you have, there you go.
Wasn't it a local media report first that had said it wasn't as serious as first feared? And that was about 24 hours after it happened. And then you started to wonder, okay, maybe he did just take maybe a bit of muscle damage at worst. But then obviously Galway had to come out and clarify it afterwards. I don't know about taking the cut. Information
is that hard to get now. If you were to contact... a lot of the time you wouldn't even consider contacting the county board now, because they try and nearly put you off whatever your hunch was or whatever your source was. So you're nearly better off just firming it up with sources that you trust, really, to be honest with you, because a lot of the time they will try and put you off the scent or try and put you off actually writing the story.
Yeah, because you had a story in the Independent today about James Maher being out with a bad leg break, and also Killian Buckley under pressure as well. Now, I had heard the same story about James Maher, and I inquired through the Kilkenny County Board to see is he out with a bad leg break? Now initially the PRO said he hadn't heard anything about it. Then he inquired, and it seems a 4 or 5 week sort of thing, which would be, mid-April, or sorry, mid-May. So he should be
just about back.
If he hits the ground running, he should be available for the Leinster Championship. And you reckon that he'd be out for the whole championship as well. So
it's not going to be easy to hit the ground running with a broken leg.
I know, yeah, but essentially we'll see how it goes.
Yeah.
But basically he's down to James Maher and is down to be back for the Leinster
Are you about
Championship.
to ask Verney to reveal a source on this? That seems to where this is
It's probably
going.
the same as myself, someone from Freshford.
It was a bad injury in club training on Tuesday night. Very unfortunate as well, because he had a terrible farming accident a couple of years ago as well. I think he broke his kneecap, did he?
Caught in a gate.
Yeah, something very, very bad. And that was after doing really well in the league. Did he? I think he did really well on Brendan Maher in the league, did he, against Tip?
Yeah, he did.
Yeah, and then he was out for that whole season. Hopefully this isn't as bad, but I suspect he'll do very, very well to feature at any stage in Leinster.
Shane O'Donnell is back with Clare, back in training there last Friday night.
He was back. I think he came back Thursday and trained Friday.
Yeah, he got 2 points in a Clare Cup win over Dura Bearfield then on Sunday.
It was a weekend, yeah.
Yeah, so that's a huge boost for them. It's not as if they haven't been playing all right anyway, and we know John Conlon, assuming he comes back from his injury okay, it just adds to what's already a fairly impressive team.
O'Donnell is going to be under pressure though. Like no matter how much gym work and that you do, especially for an inside forward, like your touch has to be lightning too as well. Like so, I don't know. They kind of said like last winter that it was unlikely that he'd play in Munster. He probably will play. Whether he's going to be as sharp as he normally would be, I'd say, is in serious doubt. And same with Conlon as well. Like Conlon's such a big man as well. It would take him a good few games to get back into the swing of things. Like so, you mightn't see the best of them till the second or third game, or maybe the fourth game, and
by which
you're under pressure at that stage, you know.
Because their first game is against Waterford in Walsh Park on the 12th of May. They don't actually play it for another 2 weeks then. Sorry, actually even longer. It's 2nd of June before they host Tipperary.
I suppose the argument would be, though, at least they bolster out the panel, even if they're not match sharp coming in straight away. You would imagine, particularly in the case of O'Donnell, like you've been in. Was he in Harvard? He's not going to be getting any kind of hurling at all, even if he is hitting the ball against the wall at some point.
You're saying it's not a hotbed of hurling. A nursery over there in Harvard.
It would seem it's not, unless he's been playing a bit of lacrosse in Harvard as opposed to playing hurling. Like realistically, even if he is, as Mick said, like he's probably kept himself in really good shape. I saw some of the pictures of him from the game at the weekend on Sunday. Obviously, he looks in perfect nick. He's been doing all the gym work and whatever else, but it's difficult to come in from the cold and then be ready for the start of the Munster Championship. So it'll be interesting to see how they deploy him and how quickly they bring him back into the team as well. Free taking issues. I think there are free taking issues all across the board.
Yeah,
at the
every
moment.
county.
Not every county.
Too far off.
Even Waterford the other day, Stephen Bennett was on him for a while. A couple of them went awry on him. Pádraig Mahony went on him then as well.
It's the last thing you want, isn't it, though? It's the last thing you want is to have to switch a free taker during the game as a player and as a manager, because you want to be looking on the field, you want to have the same lad and you want to be thinking, yeah, this is going over 99% of the time.
Yeah, even like Davies probably had about 7 different players take frees over
I watched the game, I think there was 5 different free takers in one game in the Walsh Cup, yeah.
But even beyond that, then there would have been other guys taking them in different games as well that mightn't have started that day. Dublin have had a couple of issues. Even Tipperary Ford against Callan, you know who's going to take them. It looks like Ford at this stage as well. And it is a real momentum killer if you've got someone standing over the free, someone's worked hard to win it, and all of a sudden it's the other team is let off the hook.
Which is the big thing about Rory O'Connor actually said about the officiating against Galway in the league. He said, it's one thing giving away a free, but it's another thing giving away a free and you have Canning standing over it anywhere from 100 yards in and you just think he's going to score every time.
Yeah.
And like if you give away a free out there and it goes wide, it's like, sigh of relief or whatever. But if it goes over, like it just totally kills your momentum and it kind of bursts any bubble you have or any momentum that you're trying to get moving with. So it is a big thing. I know from being down the far end of the field, you want to have the same man nearly standing over the whole way throughout the year, and you want to not even have to look at it or not even look at the scoreboard and you just think that's grand, that's one more for us. Like
I did notice that about Limerick at the weekend as well, just kind of rewatching the match this morning. They were happy enough to give away frees in a certain range against Waterford at the weekend. They almost took the foul sometimes when Waterford were trying to come out. They would swarm. Sometimes it ended in a turnover, but I think they kind of accepted they were probably going to give away a free every now and then. Yeah. Well, if you were playing Galway and you know that Canning can hit from that kind of long range, you probably think twice about giving away frees in that kind of area. And
it's interesting you bring them up because they're another team that we'll have to see through the Leinster Championship, assuming that Joe Canning, who's supposed to be out for 14 to 16 weeks, assuming he misses the entirety of that championship. Is it going to be Jason Flynn? Is it going to be Conor Cooney? We'll see. But first of all, we have a quick video here from Tommy Walsh, who's talking about Galway for the season ahead.
Joe Canning out for 16 weeks. Back in August, roughly speaking, if all goes well. We are not at the point, surely, where Galway are not going to still be involved in the championship without Canning. They can get to the last four without him, I would presume.
Yeah, well, it depends. You see that poster I back up behind me, the Game of Thrones. Last year I spoke about the Munster Championship. Nobody's safe. You had 5 teams battling it out. We were trying to predict who was going to go through, who's going to be left behind. Tipperary, the team we all probably predicted would be the first name through out of the Munster Championship, didn't get through. Well, I think this year the Leinster Championship is going to be similar. I don't think Carlow will get through, but I think the other 4 teams, any one of them could be left behind. So Galway, what's it going to happen? The Joe Canning injury, right? For Galway, they can look at the glass half empty or the glass half full. First of all, it's going to make sure that the guys step up. They have enough players. We have seen them putting up huge scores. So they have enough players to fill the void that Joe Canning. It's not going to be easy, but they definitely have guys that can take frees, that can score huge amount of points. Yeah. So I think from that side of view, if Micheál O'Donoghue plays it right, it could nearly drive on the rest of them. Say, let's do this, and Joe will be back. The other side of it, though, is I think it's definitely going to give huge confidence to their opponents. I would have predicted Galway to be probably the first name through out of Leinster. Yeah. Now, I'm not so sure. They're coming down, I think they're coming down to Nolan Park to play Kilkenny. They have to play Dublin, who top Division 1B. They have to play Wexford. I think that's actually up in probably Pearse Stadium, so they probably should win that. But as I said, nobody's safe, and Galway definitely aren't safe. So they can treat this and let's do it for Joe, and he got them out of enough holes over the years.
Okay, lads. So, do you think basically Galway can absorb the loss of Canning? Will they get through Leinster anyway? Because if you think of Plan A last year, as the season went on, was long ball to Johnny Glynn all day, and I think that was the rock they perished on. He's a very good player, but if Plan A, B and C is hit the ball long to him, and they're not getting the likes of Canning into the play enough, that's a downside. Like, he hasn't been seen yet this year. We haven't seen Joseph Cooney yet. Chances are he's not coming back. We've said that a few times. Now Canning is out for Leinster as well. So where are Galway at?
Canning's an X factor, isn't he, when it comes to close games? And I wonder if they end up in a situation where how many times have Galway been in a game where Canning has put over an inspirational score from somewhere, or done something magic along the way, or got a goal? That's probably what they're going to miss more so than the personnel. I think Galway still have lots of firepower, and they can probably share around the scores and maybe make up for the scores that Canning would have been getting himself. The interesting part is, as you say, he's been on the freeze for how long now for Galway? Just by himself, hitting them in championship situations.
One season actually Anthony Cunningham took him off him, I think. I can't
remember.
Yeah, 2014 or 2015.
14, I think.
14,
yeah. So does that mean that Cooney reverts back as the natural free taker now?
If it was 2 years ago, I would have said yes, but he didn't have a good year last year. Cooney didn't, and he didn't shoot the lights out with Thomas's either. So you're going to have serious confidence in your free taker, and your free taker's going to have serious confidence in himself. If it was 2 years ago, I think they nearly would have absorbed the blow better, because you had Joseph Cooney playing well, and you had, let's say, Conor Cooney playing well, and you have Johnny Glynn kind of come back into the fold. And even, I think they're going to be under pressure there, to be honest. And they have 2 half forwards missing as well. That's Canning and Joseph Cooney, 2 of your starting half forwards. And we've seen from, would Limerick be able to cope with? They probably would to some extent, but if Tom Morrissey and Kyle Hayes are missing, that's probably the most important line on the field now, just given what they do. So, that's a massive blow in one. If it was a back and a forward, it'd be something different,
Yeah, so you'd imagine other players will step up a little bit more, because I'd say a lot of them almost kind of stand back and let Canning
defer to Canning, I would imagine, in quite a few situations, or try and pass the ball to him.
So does that mean now other guys are going to step up? They probably will. But who's going to play Canning's role? Which now, the last day against Waterford, he played wing forward, and he was floating from there. And I remember a couple of times he picked up the ball around the 45 or whatever and ran straight up the guts of the Waterford defence and put them in disarray.
Well, they don't have anyone, Shane, that's going to play that role.
And the game beforehand against Wexford, he was floating from his own, from centre forward, basically to his own half at times, getting involved in play. Actually, Matthew O'Hanlon got on a lot of ball as well, the guy who was man marking him. But who is specifically going to do his role? Is it going to be Cathal Mannion, who you'd imagine he'll go back into the forwards now? If they're missing both Cooney and Canning, he'll go back to the forwards, Johnny Cohen and maybe Davy Burke midfield. Is he going to play that floating centre forward role?
probably the best suited to it. He's not going to take the ball down the heart of a defence like Canning did.
Not like for like.
No, and they're going to have to cut their cloth to measure in that respect. They're going to have to realise what he can do and maybe what he can't do. As regards floating around, picking up a lot of loose ball, like he's brilliant on loose ball. I wouldn't say he's going to catch a couple of puck-outs and put them over like Canning would, but he probably will get 3 or 4 scores from that area there. But they have to they're going to realise, and I'm sure they do, it's not going to be like for like, so they will try and maximise what he can do best. They're not going to try and turn him into something maybe that he's not.
And I just wonder, are they going to go to long ball if they get Johnny Glynn back in? Is it going to be long ball and make it, it's quite the opposite of how Limerick set up. Like in some ways they do have the deep roving wing forwards and all that kind of thing, but Limerick very precisely moved the ball up the field, whereas last year it just felt like Galway were just like, let's truck it into Johnny Glynn.
But even the ball in the All-Ireland final was really bad ball in.
Mike Casey was just able to spoil.
I chatted to you about this before, like he never had to, there was never a ball where he had to, like, the two of them contested and it was like a 50-50 and Casey was able to break through. Everything was over Glynn's head, like, so like that wasn't the strategy I'm sure they went with to play that day.
And Conor Whelan played centre forward the last day against Waterford as well, so I'm not necessarily sure that worked. I don't feel it did, and they probably lost his threat inside as well.
Just you mentioned there, it is a serious chance for a couple of lads to take the whole Galway panel by the scruff of the neck and basically bring them somewhere maybe that they haven't had to bring them by themselves before. They would have always had Canning there to do maybe some of the real dirty work and really, like the LeBron James type stuff at the end of a game, in the clutch situations, Canning was often the one to pull them through. Other lads are going to have to step up. I still think they'll get out of Leinster. After that, I'm not sure whether to make an All-Ireland semi-final or not, but I still think they'll get out of Leinster.
I do wonder what a chance is going to afford May the 12th for Carlow now. A Canning-less Galway, who they've already given a good rattle to in the league.
20 points each in the league, wasn't it?
They couldn't really have set up any nicer for Carlow for their first game.
Do you actually give them a chance in that game? Now it's in Pearse Stadium as well.
Yeah, well, that's the difficulty, I suppose. You're going across there as opposed to playing in Netwatch Cullen Park, where Carlow are definitely a few points better a team when they play at home. But I think their best chance is to try and start off on the front foot and actually put in a big performance in that one. I think Carlow are probably going to maybe wane as the championship goes on, and that's likely what's going to happen, I think, with the weaker team in Leinster over the next few years, not just this year.
And what a baptism of fire for them. They were away to Galway the first week, and then 7 days later they're at home against Kilkenny.
Yeah.
I think the draw needs to be looked at for these provincial championships, because if you look at Wexford, they're inactive the first week, then they're away to Dublin, and then they have a week off because there's a break in the middle of the championship. Whereas Dublin the first week, they're away to Kilkenny, and then the next week they're at home to Wexford.
Which,
so
as long as Wexford win, that's the perfect scenario,
but
because you've had a week to target. You win one of your most important games because likely they're a rival for getting to the final, and then you got the break to get ready for the next test.
But for Dublin they've got 2 games in the space of 7 days, and if you lose both of those games, you're more or less done.
Yeah.
So
just on the Carlow thing, it'd be really, really interesting if Carlow could put it up to them and keep in the game and just have doubts in Galway heads with 20 minutes to go. It'd be seriously interesting, because lads are definitely going to have to step up then.
What about, let's just move back to Waterford again. A couple of their main players probably didn't really stand out, as in guys that are most well known across the country. Brick Walsh was started against this free moving Limerick team in around midfield. He was taken off at half time.
That was a bit of a bizarre move.
Yeah.
Well, it was bizarre to start him because, like, we all know his quality. Won an All-Star in 2017, which was his 4th. Really, really important player for them down through the years. But it just felt like this free-wheeling, free-moving, interchanging Limerick team on the huge Croke Park field. Would you really start a 36-year-old guy who isn't noted for his speed in the first place?
Yeah, it's not well suited. I mean, I remember seeing Brick doing some of his best work in the All-Ireland semi-final a couple of years ago, where he just almost directed traffic against Cork, and he was a guy who was just the outball every time they put it into the forward line as well. That's an ideal place for him. A guy whose legs are going to be obviously somewhat gone with age, against that team who transition quickly and who move the ball around very quickly. He's going to get exposed in that situation. That's not playing to his strengths.
He's picking up Darragh O'Donovan for a while the other day, like the most probably mobile player on the field. I just don't think that made sense. If you're going to play him, I would have played him maybe centre forward and to hold that position, or wing forward as an outlet under a puck out. But no, it was very, very strange move in my opinion.
What about Austin Gleeson then? Because it just feels like he's searching for form. He got 5 points against Clare. Really excellent performance that day, on a day when Waterford trounced Clare. Really, it was 31 points to 114. But I just wonder, where is Austin Gleeson's form gone? Because he got a point against Galway, was not in the game at all. He got a couple against against Limerick the other day, but more or less wasn't really involved in the game. Feels like he's a yard off it even. I know we said he probably doesn't look like he's completely championship fit at the moment as well, but he does seem a little bit off. And I'm just trying to think, when did he last have a really, really strong game in a big, big game? And I'm nearly going back to 2017, because I know last year was a bit of a write-off for Waterford with all the injuries and what have you, but it just feels like it's been too long since he's had a big, big game in it, you know, on the big days.
We've seen glimpses, haven't we? But we haven't seen anything kind of consistent. That Clare game was, but by all accounts, Clare were kind of no-shows on that day. By the looks of things, like they got absolutely hockeyed out the gate. What was it? 14 points they were beaten by in the end. Like, there's been flashes of brilliance, but nothing consistent. And the whole debate about where he's playing again, it looked like he had a kind of a free roll. It looked like he was nearly an auxiliary wing back the other day.
He played a lot of the game at right wing back. On Sunday.
He was wing forward, but like he moved around and he was in full forward at times. He looked like a frustrated person out there. He didn't look like he was enjoying it. If I rewind back a few more weeks, he played centre back against Dublin, and Danny Sutcliffe scored, was it 3 or 4 points, and went to town that day. Austin was barely involved in it. Like, we know he has all the talent. He's one of the most exciting players to watch going, but it does feel like he's not quite himself at the moment, and maybe it's something to do with himself. Feels like maybe he needs to get a small bit fitter, a small bit sharper, and we can see the Austin Gleeson that we all know and love watching.
Hopefully. And look, I think positioning when it goes into the summer, I know there's a big debate about where he should play, but for me, he has to be operating around the half-forward line at this stage.
But I think that's missing the point in general. Like, I don't think it's anything to do with where they should play him. It's down to him. I don't think he's getting stuck in enough. I don't think he's moving around enough. I just feel like he looks like a frustrated player down there, and maybe he's just frustrated with himself, but he needs to get over that.
But in that kind of roving wing forward role, it's very easy for a game just to kind of bypass you. And Limerick were happy enough for him to have the ball in his own 45, and they let him have it several times because he wasn't going to do any damage there. So, like, if you're saying about getting stuck into the middle of things, yeah, he probably has to hold his hand up in that respect himself as well. But I'd say put him in somewhere. That's why I would have thought maybe they were going to look at maybe centre back or centre forward or in a central position where the game, you're guaranteed, if you're playing centre back or you're playing centre forward, you're guaranteed, you've control of your puck outs, you can put every puck out down on top of him if you want. Do you know what I mean? So that means he's in the tick of the game. Similarly, if he's centre back, the far end, he's going to be in the tick of the game.
I think you're just making too much excuses for him. I think it's up to himself.
Oh, I don't disagree.
People spend too much time talking about the position. Like, wherever you go out, you should actually be able to make an impact on the game.
You should be able to make an impact, but I think they're not helping themselves as well. But I would definitely take your point. He hasn't delivered anything consistently. Yeah, in the guts of 2 years, what are we looking at? The All-Ireland semi-final in 2017.
Yeah.
When he was
and there's been a few flicks and different bits and pieces and sideline cuts and things like that, but nothing sustained. And that was the worry. Like, I would have kind of had different arguments with like friends in that a couple of years ago. Like, they would have said, like, you know, he's too rash, he does different things. That's why you give me a TJ Reid or Patrick Horgan every day of the week, because you know at this stage what you're going to get in every game. You don't know what you're going to get from Gleeson at the moment, unfortunately.
We want to have a look at your team in the league.
Oh yeah,
Irish
stellar team.
Yeah, we'll have to get it up on screen there. I think I have it here. So, just to run through it, in goals, Nicky Quaid. Did you ever feel that was up for debate?
Maybe Owen Murphy,
yeah,
possibly, and the fact that Murphy was contributing a few frees and things like that, but not really. I think Nicky Quaid has been phenomenal throughout the whole way through the league. Do you want me to go through it?
Yeah, fly through it.
Richie English, you won't see a cornerback more comfortable on the ball than him. His deliveries out are phenomenal as well. Owen, the Bull O'Donnell. He's some player, in fairness, rarely troubled by anybody really. Noel Connors was under a bit of trouble the other day, but still probably one of the best man markers in the game and consistently throughout the league. Kevin Moran, in fairness to him, was the one Waterford player that stood up probably the other day.
And he was very good throughout the league.
He was, yeah, and he's played in a variety of different positions as well. Pádraig Mannion has kind of slotted into that number 6 role. It was, he's kind of continued on his form from last year for me.
Am I going to be accused of bias if I throw in Sean Moran's name there?
Not necessarily, no. He's very good, but as I said to you off air jokingly, anybody can play sweeper. But he plays that role particularly well, and he's brilliant on the ball.
Davy back in the line there.
He would have been a close second.
Tim O'Mahony had a couple of good games, but I think Cork fell off the map too many times to be considered.
Dermot Burns then at 5 as well.
You don't even need to say why.
Like, in fairness, 20 points throughout the league. That's outrageous.
How many
stuff.
from play?
There was at least 6 or 7 from play anyway, because he got 2 in one game and 1 in most other games apart from Sunday.
Guesswork.
Shane Golden was one of the one of the kind of maybe surprise packages. Like, I know he's in his late 20s, but he was brilliantly consistent throughout the league. Beside him then at midfield, I can't remember who I had. Carl Mannion, who's probably not going to play there now, but was averaging 3 or 4 points in most games.
Yeah,
and was picking
Jamie
up a lot of
Byrne.
loose ball.
Look, I know Jamie Byrne, and this actually kind of really reflects well on Limerick, that he basically wasn't a factor in the game massively.
Neutralising.
But he's brilliant in almost every single game.
Yeah.
Too much traffic. There was so much traffic for him. He got on a lot of ball, but there was just so many bodies around him. Like,
because that Limerick team is so fit and those half forward lines is so fit, like they're getting up and down the field. They're just transitioning this blanket midfield up and down the field the whole time, and it made it tough for the likes of Jamie. But I think he's very unlucky there because, you know, he had a quiet game the other day, but Mannion, like, he was brilliant some days and quiet another.
he was
couple of
brilliant
days.
most days, to
Yeah.
be fair. There was only one game, I think, where he didn't score 3 or 4 points. Gerard Hegarty is just kind of turned into the linchpin of this kind of Limerick team. Massive outlaw under high ball, well able to take a score. The work rate he gets through in games, I'd say his GPS stats are through the roof. Canning, if Galway got into the final, he probably would have been player of the league and wasn't far off. He was outstanding. Danny Sutcliffe kind of back to his 2013 form, I'd say, to be fair.
Exceptional, yeah.
Aaron Gallan, for me, probably the player of the league. Just outstanding, kind of highlighted by Sunday's performance. Stephen Bennett was quiet the other day, but still got 3 points and had a goal chance
A
there.
really good goal chance. He should have scored.
Yeah, that would have turned the game. And then it was a toss-up between Peter Casey from Limerick or Marty Kavanagh from Carlow, but like Marty Kavanagh pulled Carlow over the line against Offaly, 4 from play in the second half of that relegation game, and of course he scored that late, kind of drawn free against Galway in the second round as well. Like,
No Wexford players, no Tipperary players.
the
no
thing
Cork
about the thing
players.
about Wexford is like there was a load of lads, there was 3 or 4 lads like close, but there's no one outstanding, which is not necessarily a bad thing, because you would have said the same about Limerick maybe last year. They have a lot of lads at a very, very similar level, and it's a very, very good level, but I don't think anybody really stood out. Liam Ryan missed a couple of games. If not, he probably would have been in around the full back line. Tipperary, you can have your goals all you want. If you can justify one Tipperary player on that team, I'll give you a medal here and now.
I was doing my best to try and think of who I could push forward, but yeah, I'm struggling.
I don't think it exists, to be honest with you. I don't think there's anybody there.
And like, actually, just a word on Tip. Looking into the Munster Championship, do you think they're the most likely not to get through based on what you've seen in the league?
Silence. I think so anyway. Just with the lack of pace all over the field, I think they could struggle. They would be, if I was throwing it up now as what, I couldn't name the 2 teams, but if we're throwing up now, I'd say Tipperary, the most likely not to get through. Yeah, and like, if they start off poorly, they're in big trouble. If they get even a draw, we say the first week, they'll build from that. But if they start off poorly, I think they're under pressure, because I don't think things are going as well as Liam Sheedy expected them to go.
The Sheedy factor hasn't really kicked in, I suppose.
Not
like
yet.
In the space of a week, Tip go down to Cork, and then a week later at home to Waterford as well. So there's actually just no room for error in this championship.
It's great, isn't it?
Yeah.
Have you ever seen, is there any other championship in the world where you could make a case for 9 out of the 10 teams in it winning the competition outright? Because all respect due to Carlow, they're not going to win the Leinster and they're not going to win the All-Ireland. But you could make, even though Tip aren't exactly flying it, they've lost 4 games, 3 of them by a point, and we know that there's talent there.
If things click, you know they could do
it. Like, I think now with Galway possibly under pressure with missing players, as we've talked about, you could make a case that they might be a little bit under pressure, that therefore Dublin are a bit closer to them, Wexford are a bit closer, Kilkenny are a bit closer. Maybe none of those teams can necessarily win the All-Ireland, but you could make a case for them. Which, name another competition in the world where you can do that.
You're looking at American football or something like that.
Yeah. But even there's 32 teams. 90% of the teams in here have actually got some
a
sort of
realistic
chance
aspiration to get to an All-Ireland semi-final at the very
least. Which is absolutely
Galway are still vying for favouritism for the All-Ireland, which I find bizarre.
Well, like, they're still going to have 15 players out in the field, even if they don't have Canning.
I know
and
that,
if they get through Leinster, Canning he'll be back from that point on. Now, will he hit the ground running? We'll see. But you can still make a fair case for
one thing being back, it's another thing actually been up to your usual standards, like after been off for 3 or 4 months.
And it's probably difficult coming back in, particularly at an All-Ireland quarter-final or semi-final as well, when players will have had 4 or 5 round-robin games behind them before getting to that point too.
If Galway were to win Leinster, it would actually be a disaster in some respects.
You'd have to try and fit Canning in
for a semi-final if he were back fit. They'd nearly be happier to lose a Leinster final or come third, and
that's nonsense of the highest
possibility order. He would get maybe 2 games under his belt before coming in. He'd definitely get we'll say, a soft preliminary
You talk
game.
a lot of nonsense, but the idea that they'd rather lose a Leinster final or come in third position.
Who came third in Munster last year?
Sure, everyone knows that it was Limerick.
Okay.
Yeah.
What happened then?
Yeah, they went on, they won the All-Ireland. But that doesn't necessarily mean...
In an ideal scenario.
All right, do you think that they would have liked the Leinster Munster title?
Of course they would have had.
So
but they weren't crying after when the way they ended up working out, I'd say.
I like that we weren't having an official debate this week, but this has now turned into the debate. Should Galway throw the Leinster Championship?
Look, I'm walking out here if he somehow gets the decision on that.
As counterintuitive as his point is, there is a certain amount of reason in there. That say if, as we were talking about, someone stepping up.
So we'll sacrifice everything for one guy getting an extra
I
game.
never said that. It wouldn't be the worst thing in the world if that's the way it happened.
Yeah, okay, whatever. Let's talk about the club championship. It is club month. Ostensibly, it's club month. I just wonder sometimes, is club now, as John Delaney referred to the League of Ireland, is the club the problem child of the GAA?
It's a fair question, because it's a problem that they don't want to solve by the looks of things, and they don't have any interest in solving.
And why? Because it's not a moneymaker?
One, because it's not a moneymaker, and two, because I don't think they have a solution.
Yeah, I think you'd have to be drastic if you're going for solutions here.
Yeah.
It means either condensing the inter-county season down more, which they don't want to do, because obviously inter-county is both the money maker and it's the main interest driver, and there's this idea that if you give away another month, say, you're giving away the possibility of promoting your games at the very elite level. There's been a certain amount of resistance about bringing the club back into a shorter, condensed period of time. And as we saw with the argument of Cork, like I was watching OTBM yesterday morning, and there's a bit of debate earlier as well. Like one of the things I find at club, and it's difficult because obviously your club Hurling now at the moment, playing for your club, is that so many county boards, and when I say county boards, I mean the clubs within the counties as well, are determined to turn their championship structure into a league. Like where possible. It's about getting as many games as you possibly can get in. And as a result, if you decide to do that, there's almost no option in those counties but to play a game in April, or otherwise you're going to have a backlog of fixtures come August and September. And particularly if the club championships in the overall sense are condensed back to December, I find it really difficult to see championships actually being finished out unless clubs are also willing to take a certain amount of acceptance that they would go to knockout formats.
There's only one option. The split season. The split season has to happen. And like you often hear the GAA saying this has to be done democratically, go through your clubs. And it's something I think that we will harp on about throughout the summer. But I would say anyone who's involved with a club, do get onto the club and say, look, maybe we need to start pushing a proposal whereby it's a split season, and I'm just going to pick some arbitrary months and it can be tweaked any way you like it, but maybe inter-county, whatever system you want, maybe that goes from February and finish up inter-county mid-July, and then August on, that is club, and you have time to do whatever you want with your club then, because like this April month, is it actually club month? No. Because there are going to be inter-county challenge matches during the middle of this, and I was looking up...
You should ask Davy. Wexford are off on a training camp.
It's Rule 6.41 in brackets B. Provincial and Central Council can sanction challenge matches midweek during club month on Mondays, Tuesdays and Wednesdays. And is it club month or not? I mean, I think this is something that the GAA need to take the lead on, because you want your players for that club month. And because I can kind of sympathise with inter-county managers who want to prepare for the championship, that kind of brings me back to, again, it's got to be a split season whereby as a club player you play league matches coming up until August, and then everyone's into championship mode after that.
Well, I tell you what, they've given up the first Sunday in September, which was that was the big date in the hurling calendar. So there's no reason why they can't go back further. I wouldn't disagree with that. There's a lot.
Do you see a downside to the split season?
Not really.
Like this idea that people have that, you don't want to be giving up September to soccer and rugby and all this kind of stuff. It doesn't matter. We don't actually promote it enough anyway. Players aren't accessible anyway. Managers aren't accessible.
Why not promote club championship in that time?
Well, you see, this is the thing, right?
Really good.
And this is the thing, right? You see the amount of coverage that the clubs got towards the end of last year, all the way through the Leinster Championship as well. And it was huge. And then it came to the All-Ireland Club Final, and there was Six Nations Cheltenham, and it was completely lost. And even just doing it with Coola the last couple of years as well, when we got to it, there was a real sense of momentum, and you were building every week, and the championship, it was just getting better and bigger and bigger. And then all of a sudden, 12-week break.
Well, kind of what you said there is, that means you go back in probably March or April, you're ready to go for, we'll say, the first week in August, and the club calendar is played off, and the Leinster campaign, we'll say, is played off before Christmas. The All-Irelands are played mid to late January, and then the county championship starts again. And it makes sense, and at least club players know the dates in their calendar. They know that they can go off on holidays in I don't know, February and March and even early April, and then but they're ready to go come summertime, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think it will deter fellas going away to the States maybe in the summer as well, if they know, okay, we're going to be playing at least 3 or 4 games in
a very defined period. That's going to be important.
And possibly if Offaly or another county are out early, they can start earlier as well. Do you know what I mean?
I don't think there's enough. Like we had Nathan on the Gaelic football show yesterday, and he was talking about how Mayo fans, like the pilgrimage up to Dublin for matches, it's like a meeting point for Mayo people to express their Mayo-ness. And I think like the club game.
You actually say that.
Yeah. I am paraphrasing a little bit. So I mean,
I hope you're representing them properly.
Yeah, fairly, because he did say that Mayo have the best fans in the world. And,
did he say Mayo-ness, or have you just made that up?
No, I'm fairly sure he said it. I mean, don't quote me on it, but I'm fairly sure he said it. Actually, and then someone pointed out online when Tip played Mayo in the All-Ireland football semi-final a few years ago, there was a fair bit of sneering from Mayo fans, so actually there definitely was, and I'd forgotten about that. But anyway, the whole point that he's talking about is that it becomes a meeting place for Mayo people to meet each other, and the sort of the pilgrimage vibe. And then I was thinking about the club championship, and the club is what's holding a huge amount of parishes together. You know, like post offices are closing, banks are closing, small shops are closing, petrol stations are closing. It feels like pubs are closing. It feels like everything is closing down in small towns. And like where I'm from as well, I would have seen in Bursley and Tipperary, I would have seen different things closed down over the years, and it feels like there's far less businesses in the town. But what's the thing making young people come back time and time again? Yeah. And obviously someone will put up a sneery comment that I don't play for Bursley anymore. But like the point is that the GA is holding all these towns together. And if you destroy the club calendar and the club itself, what else is going to hold clubs together or parishes together? I think this is kind of the lifeblood of town. They talk about it's the lifeblood of the association. It's actually the lifeblood of the country.
I'd
it's
agree
the only
with
thing
you,
keeping rural Ireland together.
And like Will said there, the big thing is with the GA, if they were to promote the club championships a lot more, I'm not talking about provincial campaigns, I'm talking about county campaigns and various club championships that are going on, like that could be huge. Like, as you said, everything was lost around St. Patrick's Day and all like that. Why not, like, really give the club championships a real certain time in the calendar and just go for it and just see how big it can be? Like, it's good steps by having club games on TG Carter #1. Some club games, I believe, are going to be on RTE as well in April.
So
that's a start. Just keep that moving. The stories in the club championships are the best stories. Let's call a spade a spade.
Well, look at last year. Ballyboden St Enda's and Coolary was probably the best game of hurling that was
5:28 to 5:25 or something.
After 2 periods of extra time.
Yeah.
Like, that's top quality entertainment.
Yeah, the club is fantastic.
The other thing as well, Shane, I was thinking, when it comes to the split season, I don't know about football, because obviously the Football League takes a bit longer to play, but I would have no problem if the Hurling League actually started a little bit later than what it starts now.
Well, I would actually prefer a revamp altogether, whereby the league is absorbed within the championship, and this is the way I do it. And it's hard to explain it without putting it up on the screen, and I haven't pre-prepared it. But essentially, what if the Munster and Leinster championship are played as round robins, as they are, so everyone gets 4 teams, and then you play the finals, and you get bonus points for the finals, let's say 3 for winning your championship as well. Okay. So then you mesh the 2 tables together, and if you're, for example, a Munster team, you then play each Leinster team. Yeah. And then if you're in the Leinster side, you then play each Munster team. So it's like the round robins have played twice, so all 10 teams have played the other teams once each, and then the top 2 get to the All-Ireland semi-final, the next get to the All-Ireland semi-finals, and then the remainders play relegation.
I like the idea, because
you have a lovely amount of games, and they're all high profile, and they all matter, because everyone says league is league, whereas now it's actually really important.
And the good thing about that system is you retain your local rivalries, first of all, because you have to play each other in meaningful games within your own province anyway, and then you get the more interesting mix-ups that don't happen all that often because of the way the provincial system used to be. Like, I think in a way we're conditioned to this idea happening now anyway, because the minute that we went from knockout provincial championships to a round robin, it is a league in disguise already. Yeah. So why not make the next natural move, which would be to make the league meaningful in terms of...
You have a set calendar the whole way.
I'm sure every other competition does it. When you look at it, like every other sport does it. Is there many other competitions that don't operate on a league basis?
It would be absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, and it leaves a certain amount of safety net as well, that a team isn't going into knockout where their year could end very quickly, so the players still get meaningful games. But also it means that you'd be cutting down on the amount of matches that kind of become less meaningful. Like 1A, without the threat of relegation this year, I think took away a lot of the threat of that division.
It did a bit, yeah.
While if your games are actually meaningful all the way along, they'll be interesting. And then push club into months where they can actually play on better ground and so on as well. Because the one that kills me is that the provincial finals are usually played quite late in December. when you're effectively at quite soft conditions if we're looking at this horse racing.
It's not ideal weather.
And then they have to actually winter and get ready to go for February for a single game where all form can be totally lost that they had at the end of December anyway. Players get injured because they're trying to play challenge matches against under 21 teams. And as you said, the entire gloss has gone off St. Patrick's Day. Look at the attendances that we had this year. I appreciate that we had some small enough clubs that were involved in the final, like rural enough areas in there, but still it did not capture the public imagination to go as neutral as to where
I even remember the year before when we were playing the Piercy in Croke Park, it clashed with Man United and Liverpool as well, and I think never mind the horrendous weather, I think that also took away from it as well.
I definitely would, as you said, encourage people, number one, to lobby their county ward and give their views from their membership in a club. They're perfectly entitled to do that. And number two, if they have any horror stories or anything like that, I'd say let us know as well, and we try and bring them to the national attention.
Because it's certainly a topic that we're going to keep on throughout the summer. I think the split season might be the only way to go forward, because as a club player, Pádraig Duffy even said a couple of years ago, the Director General, that they want to have a calendar whereby you get at least 2 championship games per year as a club player, which I think is a ridiculously low number. You want 5 or 6 games at least. Kilkenny have the league championship system whereby you get 5 games in 2 groups of 6. So I think at a minimum you need something like that. So the split season might be the way to go, and hopefully we'll generate a bit of momentum behind that. Lads, we're going to have to leave it there. Right,
it's been emotional.
That's the end of the hurling show for the league. We'll be back again for the championship, and keep an eye on OTB PM this evening for plenty more coverage.